we'll give a quick introduction and basically a synopsis of our fundraising path so far, and then we'll really get into it. So my background is that I invented the home sous vide immersion circulator, like for real. Yeah, whoa, thank you.
Give it up.
Clap myself internally. All right, everybody who clapped gets a free Nomiku. Too late. I've raised every kind of capital. We started on Kickstarter, $1.3 million on Kickstarter. We've raised institutionalized venture capital. We've raised corporate VC. Samsung is an investor in my company. We've raised lots of angel. We've raised on Shark Tank even. So we have a lot to get through. Sara here is also a major hustler when it comes to the raise. Give us your background.
Hi, yeah. So I founded Winnie about 3 years ago now. Wow, it's been a while. Winnie is an app that you can download, and it's a website, winnie.com. And actually, I am giving it away for free right now. So I'll take a minute. You can all, it's a free app. So it helps parents find daycare, preschool, and other family-friendly places to go with their kids. I created it after having my first child and realizing this did not exist. It was impossible to find childcare. It was impossible to find things to do with my daughter, and raised more traditional venture capital, as well as angel investment, over a few different rounds of fundraising. So happy to talk about that and what it's like.
So we'll just jump right into it. Sara, like, I want to know, how did you prepare for your first fundraise? What was that like? How did you think about it? Did you raise a pre-seed or went straight to seed?
Yeah, so it's funny because the very first round of fundraising, I was the least prepared for. I actually didn't prepare anything. I actually would tell VCs, oh, I'm not raising, I'm just here to get advice. And that was the easiest round to raise, was that first pre-seed, where I didn't even have a pitch deck. I just had an idea. And really, in retrospect, the reason it was so easy was not because I was so unprepared, but because at that stage, investors are really investing in you. And so at that stage, I was pitching basically people I had worked with, people that knew me, people who were placing a bet on me and my co-founder, and not so much the idea, they wanted to know that we had an idea that they got excited about, but they weren't investing on the traction that we had so far because it was all in our heads at that point. So that was by far the easiest round. It was also the smallest round because it was the pre-seed round.
So you started this company when you were already a very accomplished technologist, because your at is SM.
Oh, yeah. Well, that short Twitter handle does not correlate with accomplishment, but I did work at Twitter sort of earlier on in its incarnation. And I'd also worked at Google and Postmates and YouTube. And a lot of the people that I'd worked with went on to do really important things. Me, not so much yet. But a lot of people I worked with became famous or wealthy, which is great when you're raising money because it turns out all those people are people that can potentially fund your company. So it was really helpful that I wasn't a complete asshole to people I had worked with previously. I was a moderate asshole because I didn't realize at the time you're supposed to be nice to people. But I wasn't a complete asshole, so there was a lot of people that I could hit up for money when I started Winnie.
So what you did is you turned your social capital into real capital. That's amazing. So that's something that we can all keep in mind.
I like that. That's a good way to put it.
You were okay, now let's take it to the bank.
Pretty much.
My first round, I did not have a lot of social capital. I was 22 when I did a DIY open source sous vide machine, and I went to traditional investors because I thought that was the game. You have an invention. This is my cartoon daydream. I have an invention, dun, 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 take it to the big millionaire investor and just be let's do this, let's grow it together. I have a spreadsheet about 80 investors, and everything next to it is no, 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 no. And each time it was different. It was you are too green. Nobody's going to buy something where you have to cook food in a plastic bag in the water, even though every single top chef in the world was already doing that. So then I was just like, dude, F this. I'm just going to go into credit card debt. This is obviously descriptive, not prescriptive. Don't do that if you can help it. I pray that you are independently wealthy, that you could just kick it off yourself. So 22, no funding. We went to China. And then when we came back, 1 week before our wedding, we begged our wedding videographers, like, please, could you help us make a Kickstarter video? We put it up on Kickstarter. It becomes the #1 most funded project in our category. Yeah. Thank you. And I'm glad I was also not an asshole to the investors. I wasn't just like, well, fuck you then, if you don't want to fund me. Because they all came back. They're like, wow, Lisa, amazing traction. How much money do you need? I was like, huh? How much you got? So what was your second round like?
Yeah, so I think like the takeaway from all this is like everyone is a potential investor. Like even poor friends that you have some money they can invest. And so like there are a lot of vehicles for getting their money and leverage all of those vehicles, whether it's a Kickstarter or traditional VC or angel funding. Our next round, we were like way more prepared because we were going to do the real fundraising thing and raise a proper seed round. Also, this naming is great. Like you have like 50 million seed rounds before you have to start using the alphabet. So this was going to be our, quote, proper seed round. And so we prepared a bunch for it. And it was shortly after our app had actually launched in the App Store. And so we had like some very early numbers and we were excited because we had metrics to put in our deck and we could show, you know, what we had done. And that was harder for sure. Because once we started showing numbers and there was like actually something that we had built, investors were investing based on that versus just investing in like the vision and the dream. And the reality after a month after launch is never going to be as exciting as the vision and the dream. And so like we started getting a ton of no's. And that caused us to take a step back. And we actually got some really good advice from some folks who had invested in our pre-seed round, which was like, don't focus the conversation so much around what you have built because it's only been a month, and focus more on where you're going and what the big vision is. And when we sort of did that, which was hard for me, I'm a product person, and so like I wanted to show all the cool mocks of my product and what we had built. But investors, they want to know like how is this thing going to be like a multi-billion-dollar business one day? So we took out all the stuff around what we had built, and we didn't even say we had launched anything at that point. And then it started going better because then the investors can sort of dream with you and imagine like where this thing could go.
What do you do with all those no's that you get? Does it mean anything? Like how do you separate the noise from what you should really change?
Yeah. No's are really hard. They were really hard for me because I'm, the kind of person who wants to be a good student and like do everything by the book. And so it felt like a rejection. And I really had to change my mindset. And when you're fundraising, it's more like a sales funnel. You have to assume that most things are going to lead to no at the end. And when you sort of think of it like that, and really that you only need to get one yes. You need to get that one lead investor, that one person who's going to believe in you and bring everyone else along. It gets a lot easier. So I just went into these meetings assuming it was going to be no, and that was an easy assumption to have after I got like 20 no's in a row. And I didn't get upset when it was no. I didn't think too hard about it. I was just like, okay, on to the next guy. And a lot of them are guys. Eventually you find some that do believe in you, and some investors that you're going to connect with. And also like, it was important to me that the people, I believe that Winnie is going to make a shitload of money one day. It's going to make me rich. It's going to make my investors really rich. And I wanted the people that get rich from this thing to be a diverse set of people, to be people that I want to make wealthy. I want that wealth to be like more distributed than just like some more white dudes getting wealthy. So it was also important to me to like bring on people that looked different and were different than your traditional venture capitalists that you would imagine, which may have made it a little bit harder, but I think was like, it felt like the right thing to do in the end. And I found people that I feel like I can really partner with for the long term and have been with us through like ups and downs.
I had such a hell of a time raising money. I did this thing that was first like, a lot of folks thought it wasn't going to be mainstream. Today I've written my second international best-selling cookbook on the subject. I'm like, come on, dude, there's a market for everything. Some people buy like $20 million worth of unicorn floaties a year. Like, there is literally a market for everything. And it drives me insane, but like, I got a lot of pushback because one, I have an incredibly capital-intensive business. One update about my business is that we ship you now the food with the machine. So we're basically like Keurig or Nespresso for dinner. You wave it in front of the machine, it automatically recognizes the time and temperature. You can put as many bags in there as you want, and in 30 minutes, you have a gourmet meal for your entire household. Like, that sounds to the end consumer, yeah, that's what I want, to anybody who's done ops, who's been an operator, they're just like, holy shit, how are you gonna do that? I'm like, I done it. It's already live. And that is really scary for a lot of folks because it's incredibly capital intensive. What happened was I was like, hey, I just need more prestige in order to get attention, because people are like, hey, you're a first-time founder. You're what now? You have two small kids, a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old. What do you do with them all day? They'd be like, oh, where are they now? I'm like, oh, fudge, I have no idea. See, when I talk about my kids, I censor myself a little bit more in case they're listening. In the future, your mom at Startup Grind. But so like, we joined Y Combinator in order to get that prestige. You haven't been through like HBS or don't have a lot of clout in the community. It is a pretty good stepping stone to join a prestigious accelerator. Whether one that you give up equity for, like YC, or HBS, where you give up money and time for, it just depends. It gives you that extra layer of community so that when you step out and raise, when investors do diligence, they're just like, well, have you heard of Lisa Fetterman? We've never heard of her before. And she's like, and then people will be like, oh, she was part of my YC class. She totally fucking kills it. What a great lady. I imagine that's what people are saying. So it really helped us going through Y Combinator to build that network. When we went to our next fundraise, people were very, very much more excited about us that we had this extra check mark to our name. Was there anything in particular that happened to you that was like, whoa, that set your fundraise on fire?
Yeah, I mean, you bring up an interesting point, which is that, people said to you like, oh, that's never going to work when you had already built it. I think women, underrepresented groups, like, you tend to be underestimated. And it's like, we would get all the time, oh, that's a good idea, but I don't know. And it's like, when we were raising our last round, we had over 1 million users in over 10,000 cities. And it was like, I don't care if you think it's maybe not a good idea. Like, look at the numbers, look at our traction. But it's hard for some investors to separate like their personal views of, oh, I don't know if I really need to find childcare because I have, a lot of money and I don't have to worry about that, with what real humans actually need and use. And so like, it was helpful for me to just remind myself that it's not me, especially our last round. Like, I raised when I was in my 3rd trimester of pregnancy. So I was like walking in there like this big pregnant woman with a kid at home and another kid on the way, and got all the usual questions of like, well, what are you going to do? Like, how is it possible?
Dog crate.
Yeah. So it's just helpful to keep in mind, like, especially if you're someone who's underestimated because you're a woman or you're a minority, it's not you, it's them. And so like, yes, you will have to talk to more people to get that yes. But the no isn't something you're doing wrong. It's just the patriarchy. And so that was helpful for me to always like keep in the back of my mind. And it just kind of gave me that extra push. I also like had a baby I was about to birth, and I was like, I need this money before I have this baby. which is another helpful push. I recommend pregnancy to everyone.
Smash the patriarchy, get preg, birth babies. So we have a great question that's up here on our monitor. It says, to what extent is a VC involvement or influence on your creativity, product, and services? Ooh, that's such a good one. Thanks, Tao O'Sullivan. Damn straight. Awesome. Okay, so I'll answer that. We had a quite intense VC. Thank God they were on a note, Samsung Venture Capital. So they, obviously when a corporate VC comes in, they're looking for the strategic alignment and they're gonna push on that. And Samsung put in the biggest check that our company's ever seen. So we were like, yes, master, what's up? It just like, we wanted to walk lockstep into that with them because we're like, hey, you're gonna buy us someday, probably. You're just like taking a sample right now. Thank you. So we're just like, okay, what do you want us to do? When we first got involved, we integrated our app with their smart fridge so that you could tap on their fridge and know the inventory of your food, And it was fine up to a point. Like, I was fine with them influencing that part of my product to get distribution to the point where it did not disrupt our main goal, which was eradicating every obstacle between you and a delicious plate of food. When they had my entire tech team grinding 5 nights, 5 days in a row, we get home at like 2 a.m. It's too much. It's disruptive of our core goal. So we scaled back on that. We're like, hey, thank you for this opportunity. We finished this skeleton app. Like, we gotta focus on our margins, or else you're not gonna put in money in us again, right? You're just gonna like bleed us dry, and then the next round it's not gonna happen, or like we're not gonna reach profitability. So I'm fine with investors putting in advice, and I'm fine with trying a lot of things. A lot of these investors are former operators. However, when it bleeds into our core goal, then I'm just like, gotta stop. Which one do you want to
Okay,
answer?
how do you cold email VCs? I want to take this because everyone always asks me for intros to my investors. And so like I'll forward over an intro and the investor will be like, yeah, this sounds good, make the intro, or no, I'm not interested. Actually one of our investors, Hunter Walk from Homebrew, had a great blog post where he basically said like, email yourself. It's much better than getting this cold intro from someone who's not really going to advocate for you. And like, there are very few people I know well enough and know about their business well enough to advocate for. Like Lisa's one of them. She's sitting right next to me.
Queen.
But I'm like busy building my company. I'm not like really involved in other companies that much. So for the most part, like just because you see me on Twitter and that like Hunter is one of my investors, it's better to go to him yourself, write a well-informed email about the kinds of companies that VC invests in and why your company would be an interesting fit. Most of these VCs, their email is very easy to get. Like it's not hard. You can ask them, tweet them, look on their website. Super easy to find their email. And it's much better to just email them with a thoughtful email than to try to get some third-degree connection of someone you once went to school with who may know your sister, to write an intro that is just going to get a no from them. It's also harder for VCs to say no when you email them directly to your face, versus if someone passes on an email, they can just be like, yeah, tell them no, I don't want to meet. So I highly, highly recommend you just reach out to people directly. This is what I did, sort of regardless of whether I really knew them or not, unless I knew I could get a really strong intro from someone.
So this is a quick one. Oh, there was one on here. What basically note did you use to take pre-seed and seed capital? Pre-seed for us, like we didn't know better before we joined Y Combinator. There's a safe note. Safe notes are freaking fabulous. Use them when you can. We just did it on convertible, and then later all the convertibles converted into a price round for seed.
Yeah, I actually raised my very first pre-seed round on a priced round. I've also done notes and safes for like interim funding. It's all basically the same at the end of the day. Like there's not some huge trick. It's just like, what is your cap or your valuation? And you have to make sure that keeps going up in subsequent rounds or you're taking a lot of dilution. So it's really just whatever the vehicle is that makes the most sense for the investors you have involved and the amount of legal fees you want to spend.
Last question, you pick, Sara.
Did investor feedback ever make you think you had to change the direction of your business or goal? Yes, but really all I had to change was my pitch. It turns out like you can pitch what the investor wants to hear, and then you can take their money, and then you can build the thing that's actually going to make them a lot of money. And we figured out this trick kind of late in the game. It took one of our existing investors to kind of tell us, like, you know, stop talking about like the parents and the daycares that you're helping, and talk more about like the data that you have and all this proprietary information. So we, you know, made our pitch sort of more data centric and less like touchy-feely, and it helped. And so, you know, the specific trick for your pitch will be depending on what you're building. But I would just say, like, you can pitch whatever you want. It doesn't have to be exactly the way that you're actually going to build the company once you raise the round.
Thank you, everyone. This is our talk. If you want to fund us, come find us. If you want us to help you with funding, let the people who want to fund us talk to us first.
Thank you.